All right, welcome back to the channel. So let's talk a little bit heavyweight boxing. There was an article that came out in World Boxing News. Shout out to World Boxing News. And with speculation of a doubleheader, heavyweight doubleheader taking place in maybe Saudi Arabia. And the doubleheader would be Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua versus Kubrat Pulev in a doubleheader. Man, that would be great if it was possible. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, World Boxing News, I read every day. I don't always like what they write about, but it is what it is. They've got opinions. They have the right to express it, and they do it in a very, very professional way. I enjoy going to the website. You actually get a lot of really good news out of they come out of the UK from World Boxing News. So yeah, hey, go check them out. You'll enjoy some of the reads that you get over there. But one of the articles that they wrote about talked about the potential for a doubleheader between Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, that fight, and the fight between Anthony Joshua and Pulev. So first things first, why is that significant? Because both of these fights they're already locked in. Both of the fights are heavyweight fights that include all of the heavyweight championship belts. In the case of Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, it's the WBC belt. In the case of Pulev and Joshua, it's the WBA, the IBF, and the WBO belt. I am not including the IBO. Thank goodness. That's one good thing that came out of Anthony Joshua losing to Andy Ruiz. All of the talk about the IBO being a fifth championship belt ended. Thank goodness. But anyway, all those belts will be on the line between those two fights. But problem is that neither one of those fights can happen right now because the world is locked down off this virus thing, right? So the idea now, why would it be in Saudi Arabia or somewhere like that? Because they supposedly, or I assume, don't have the same restrictions in place that the UK does and that the United States does, which would allow those fights to be aired there, to be held there, and I guess aired throughout Europe and throughout North America, right? That's the idea. And the backdrop from it is, or the fight that, what makes it realistic is that there was a fight in Saudi Arabia where there was a lot of money paid that was between Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz. So they want to just repeat the same thing, but repeat it in Saudi Arabia. But supposedly, I assume, man, my vocabulary is in the toilet today. From what I suppose that they would obviously have to increase the amount of money paid in that scenario significantly. So in one breath, I think that it would be a very, very good thing if that could happen. Would love if that could happen for a couple reasons. Oh, that's not for me. Sorry, man. I get tweets and stuff from work on my job. So I look over there every once in a while. It's just what it is. I'm kind of doing two things at the same time. So it'd be great because that would be kind of like a throwback to the Don King days. Remember when they used to have really good fights and really good undercards so that you could go to the fight, like now if you go to boxing matches, you can pretty much sit dang near ringside up until, the second fight. Dang, the second fight. The penultimate fight, you could get all the way up there because people ain't really interested in a lot of the undercard fights. But Don King used to have just a very, 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 somebody's blowing me up and I am not answering. Very, very good cards where you could see multiple really good fights. You would have, Mike Tyson fight, but on the undercard, you would have Julio's fights with Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., really good fights where you could have the whole card. So if that was a night of boxing, from my point of view, if somebody said, hey, $80, you get to watch, the Anthony Joshua versus Pulev fight, then you get to see the Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury fight, man, I would be just amped. And then the winners could face off and kind of have that mini tournament, dude. That would be absolutely great. I also think financially it would probably work for a lot of people if they just depending on how much they man, if somebody calls you like 5 times in a row and you don't recognize the number, you're overdoing it. But anyway, I think people would buy it. Now there obviously is the issue with there being a lot more people that are out of jobs and so their money might be tighter. So maybe they won't be worth paying, not as many people would be paying $80 or whatever. But I don't know, man, because it's only $80. I mean, only $80 might not sound like only $80 to everybody, but for $80, there's people that do that, would spend that on going to the movies and a dinner with their friends. And after being stuck in this type of containment stuff for so long with no live sports, if boxing was able to actually pull that off first, it might get a lot of interest from people who otherwise would not watch boxing matches just because they want to sit down and watch a live sporting event and what would be one of the best cards that you could possibly make up. So yeah, man, I think from that sense, it would be a good thing. Now, the bad thing about it is, more than likely it ain't gonna happen. You know what I mean? That's the bad thing. More likely it's not gonna happen because that's not how, first, even if it could happen, I mean, it would have to be like pure financial desperation out of the part of Bob Arum specifically to do that. And the reason I say that is because even though you could probably make a lot of money in that one fight, you wouldn't make as much money as if you could do it in 2 separate evenings. So you make money, so you would have the people buying the first fight, the first pay-per-view card, and then maybe buy the second one a week later. I could see if they wanted to arrange it that way where it was 1 week, then the next week, then yeah, maybe somebody like Bob Arum would be willing to do that. But you would have to have a very, very high price and have to do a huge amount of sales in order to afford it. Or the Saudi Arabia would have to come off ridiculous amounts of money. There you're talking somewhere around $200 million. There's $200 million in purses sitting in those 2 matchups between Anthony Joshua, Kubrat Pulev. Well, not the Anthony Joshua, Kubrat Pulev. That's more of like a 75-25 split. But you have a 60-40 split that's in the 60-40 split in Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury's stuff, but it's not a man. So that's an agreed upon deal. But so you might. The Anthony Joshua versus Pulev fight might be a little less expensive than the Anthony Joshua Tyson Fury fight, but they would still have to kick out somewhere around $200 million in purses. And then to make it worth people's time, you would have to have some Saudi guys willing to come up off of $250 million to make that fight. Now, if they're willing to come up off of $250 million to make that fight, by all means, please make that fight. I just don't see that thing happening. And plus, you have the other problem with it is you have 3 different promoters. You have, Arum. Actually, I think you might have 4 promoters because you have Arum and Frank Warren for Tyson Fury. You got Arum for Pulev. You have Hearn for Joshua. And then you've got Deontay Wilder and the PBC call that one group. So you got 4 different deals. You also have where would the American, who has the rights to the American audience? Is it going to be Fox for one, but the other fight is strictly ESPN? So is Fox going to air the ESPN and the ESPN fight on Fox? Well, actually, there's 3. You got DAZN, you have ESPN, and you have Fox. So you'd have to work all that type of stuff out. It just seems like it's, that's a bit of a stretch. You know what I mean? But so obviously, the goods, there's a lot of really good reasons to do it. There's reasons why the more than likely can't happen and won't happen. But hey, it's worth the consideration and it would be worth the effort. I know that what Bob Arum said, as far as all this talk about Deontay Wilder stepping aside and Kubrat Pulev stepping aside so there can be a Joshua Fury fight, that there is, people accepting offers or taking offers from people that are pitching, trying to get the fight to come to their region. So I do believe that there could be some that there's some possibility for this, even though that might seem far-fetched, I believe that it is a possibility and there's an outside chance. And like I said, man, desperate times call for desperate measures. And I wouldn't, if people are in really tough situations, they find a way to make things happy make things happen that'll keep them in business. This potentially could be one of the biggest fights one of the biggest and best values that you could get out of a boxing match. Like, the biggest fight to date, at least in, total dollar, not with any net present value calculations taken into consideration. The biggest fight is, Mayweather versus Pacquiao, right? With net present value taken into consideration, it's Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier. But this particular fight, man, that would just be, definitely of this century, the best value you could possibly get on a pay-per-view card. And I hope that it happens. I just don't believe that it will. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.